Listen up! There's a website called Consumer Reports, and they recently dropped a report saying your protein powder is basically poisoning you with lead. And now everyone's losing their goddamn minds. So, let's take this opportunity to talk about it. Because the headline was, scary as fucking hell. But the actual science, that there, is way less dramatic. I'm going to explain why you're probably fine, why this report used a bullshit threshold, and what you actually need to know if you don't want to sound like an absolute idiot at the gym. So, here's what happened. Consumer Reports tested a bunch of protein powders and found that most of them, especially, listen up, plant-based ones, had detectable levels of lead. Cue the mass hysteria. However, here's the thing that no one really bothered to ask. How much lead are we actually talking about? And also, compared to what? Because those are kind of the important details that you would like to consider before you decide whether or not to freak the fuck out. The threshold they used for this report was California's Proposition 65, or Prop 65 for short. Now, Prop 65, they set the limit at 0.5 micrograms of lead per serving. Now, let me tell you something about Prop 65. It's not actually based on any actual scientific evidence about what would harm you. It is a legal threshold that is so low, it catches almost everything and anything. There's been Prop 65 warnings on like weight plates, furniture, and you know what? Probably your fucking neighbor's cat if California had its way. In all seriousness, the point is, Prop 65 is absurdly conservative. It's like setting the speed limit at 5 miles per hour and then acting shocked when everyone's fucking speeding. According to a 21 review in the Journal of Toxicology and Environmental Health, Prop 65 warning levels are often set at levels thousands of times lower than what would actually cause any kind of health effects. They're designed to be overly cautious to the point of being practically useless for assessing any kind of real risk. Okay, let's talk about some of the organizations that actually base their standards on evidence. The FDA. They set the daily limit for lead at 8.8 micrograms per day for adults. The World Health Organization has similar guidelines based on actual toxicology studies, not legal covering your fucking back. So, if the Prop 65 threshold is 0.5 micrograms per serving, and the FDA says 8.8 micrograms per day is the limit, do the fucking math. You'd need to consume somewhere between 15 and 20 servings of protein powder in a single day to even approach the FDA threshold. 20 scoops in a day. 20. Listen, if you're doing that, if you're doing 20 servings in a day, we need to have a very different conversation about your relationship with protein powder. Because at that point, it's no longer a supplement. You're replacing actual food with shakes. And that's concerning for an entirely different reason. Lord have mercy on your fucking guts. Lord have mercy on your fucking toilet. Oh my days. Now, here's something that's absolutely going to blow your mind. Lead is in soil. It's naturally occurring. Now, plants grow in soil. Therefore, plants are going to absorb teeny tiny amounts of lead. Now, what I've just said there is not controversial. It's just geology and biology doing their thing. A 2018 study published in Environmental Pollution analyzed lead content in various foods and found that fruits and vegetables contain similar trace amounts of lead to what was found in these protein powders. We're talking leafy greens, root vegetables, even that organic kale that you paid bare money for at Whole Foods. Yeah, that has a bit of lead in it. We're talking parts per billion here, microscopic amounts. And here's the kicker. Whether you buy organic or normal, conventional, doesn't matter for the lead content. A 2014 study in Food Additives and Contaminants showed that organic and conventional produce have essentially the same levels of lead because, again, lead comes from the soil, not from pesticides or farming practices. It's about where the soil is located and what's naturally in it. Now, before people come at me and try to twist up what I'm saying, I'm not saying lead is fine. Eat all the lead you want. Let me be crystal motherfucking clear. There is no safe level of lead exposure. The scientific consensus, which is supported by research from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and numerous toxicology studies, is that you should minimize lead whenever possible. Lead accumulation can cause neurological damage, cardiovascular issues, and a whole host of other problems, particularly in children. But, and this is a huge but, we need to be realistic about exposure. You're going to get some environmental lead exposure no matter what you do, unless you live in a motherfucking bubble. Now, the question is whether the amount in your protein powder is something you should actually worry about compared to all the other sources of lead in your environment. So let's get specific. Plant-based protein powders generally had higher levels of lead in the Consumer Reports testing, as opposed to the whey protein powders out there. Why? Because plant-based protein powders come from plants, which come from soil, which contains lead. Whereas your whey protein powder, that comes from milk. And cows ain't really out here eating dirt all day. So the lead contamination tends to be significantly lower. If you're using whey and you saw this report, you're probably in the clear with most products. However, if you're using a plant-based protein powder, you might want to actually look at the specific results. And they've also listed the products that they tested. So if you went through that list, you might want to choose a product that was on the lower end. Now, the highest level that I saw in that report was around 7 micrograms in some plant-based protein powders, which is still under the FDA daily threshold. But remember, if you're having multiple servings a day, then it adds up. So be selective. Check the actual data. Don't panic and assume all protein powders are trying to kill you. Here's the thing that drives me absolutely insane about reports like this. If you set a threshold low enough, everything fails. And you could test literally anything and find trace amounts of contaminants if you're looking hard enough with sensitive enough equipment. A 2017 paper in Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology discussed exactly this problem. When regulatory thresholds are set without regards to actual health risks, you end up with situations where people just panic about negligible exposure whilst ignoring actually harmful behaviors. I mean, it's like worrying about the lead in your protein powder whilst you're smoking cigarettes and eating a shit ton of fast food every day. The priorities are completely backwards. The dose makes the poison. That's toxicology 101. Half a microgram of lead is not the same as 50 micrograms, which is not the same as 500 micrograms. Please remember, context matters, dose matters. I'm going to make a series of these videos, right? And I'm going to show you how by cherry picking something and pulling it out of context can make it sound fucking scary as fuck. Here's my advice. And I'm going to make it really simple because I don't want anyone to come away from this video and not get it. First thing, yes, absolutely, you should try to minimize lead exposure where you reasonably can. That's just common sense. If there are 2 equally good protein powders and one has less lead, pick that one. Easy decision. Secondly, don't consume ridiculous amounts of protein powder. If you're having a couple servings a day, you're probably fine, at least based on the levels that was detected. However, if you are chugging shakes all day long, maybe reevaluate your choices. And I would always push food over supplements. I'm a supplement guy. I do recommend protein shakes, right? However, I use protein shakes to fill a hole and then eventually try to get my clients up to a point where they can eat more actual protein. And for some people, that might not be reasonable for the amount of protein that they might have to consume. So we still keep a protein shake in there. But if you're having 15 to 20 servings of a protein powder, that's bad. Third, if you're really concerned, check the Consumer Reports list and choose a product that tested on the lower end. They publish the data, so use it. That's what it's there for. And fourth, keep some goddamn perspective. You're getting lead exposure from tap water, from vegetables, from the air pollution in the city that you live in. Your protein powder is probably not your biggest lead concern, unless, again, you're doing something truly stupid with it. Look, I get it. Headlines can be scary. No one wants to think they're poisoning themselves with their post-workout shake, but the actual science here does not support the level of panic that this report generated. Consumer Reports use a threshold that's not evidence-based, didn't provide proper context for the levels they found, and scared the living shit out of people unnecessarily. Could they have said, here are the products with the lowest levels of lead, without making it sound like everyone's dying? Sure, but that doesn't get the clicks, does it? Unfortunately, in the fitness industry, it's a business. Even when you talk about influencers, which I never claim to be, I make these videos to educate and to share my knowledge for anyone who might not be able to actually use me as a coach and pay my prices. This is kind of the way that I try to help everyone and gives everyone a little bit of something, right? I never classify myself. In fact, I'm insulted if anyone tries to call me an influencer. But then you will have some influencers that would have taken this kind of information and made a very clickbaity and very scary video so that they can get the clicks and they can get the shares, right? And unfortunately, that is people basically selling their soul. I am not going to do that. I'll be truthful the best way I can and always give you what I believe is the truth and what I align with. So here's the bottom line. Be smart, not scared. Check the data if you're concerned. Choose quality products. Don't go overboard with servings. And for the love of God, stop forwarding panic-inducing articles to people without reading past the fucking headline. Information beats panic every single time. Now, go make a protein shake. Stop worrying about parts per billion and go get it fucking done.